Hey everybody, it's Romania Black, and we're on volumes 15 and 16 of Seraph of the End. And I had to take my contacts out today, so I'm wearing my glasses for this one. But, yeah, so I'm pretty excited. I've not gotten very much further into, I've got the second novel of Gurren Ichinose, Catastrophe at 16, and I'm not very far into it. I've just gotten into like the first two chapters. To be honest, I've been a little bit busy with some other things, and maybe some Ace of the Diamond fan fiction. I've just been a little distracted. So I've only been reading a couple chapters of this, but before I do volume 17 and 18, I am hoping to get this book completed before I get into those volumes, but no guarantees. But I do feel a little bit better knowing going into this that the mangaka realizes and the author realizes that these are separate things. So this is just going to supplement whatever I find out in the manga and vice versa. So if I've learned some things in the manga with these two volumes, then as I'm reading these light novels, because I'm going to do a video on them alone, then that will help me kind of do that. So it's going to be a win-win either way. It's very odd because I'm not used to reading a series that has a spin-off series and I'm reading them at the same time. I don't normally do that. It kind of reminds me of Vigilantes. There's My Hero Academia, and Vigilantes is like the spin-off series, but it came after the fact, and so it just kind of ties into the main storyline in cute ways. This seems like it's prequel, like exposition that we should know, and I've learned a lot from the novels so far in relation to Seraph of the End. So it'll be fun when I get through all four novels, and I did go ahead and get the 2 Resurrection novels, so there's that too! So when I get through that, that'll be a lot of fun, right? So I'm excited about that. That will be a lot of fun to get to. But yeah, so I'm pretty excited to read these 2 volumes. We're going to be doing chapters 56 through 59 in volume 15 and chapters 60 through 63 in volume 60. So should be a fun time. Gurren is a very interesting character in the light novel so far. He's different than Yu, which I like. He's also extremely tragic and angsty and has lots of ennui, which, you know, is fun. And Shinya's interesting too. And the only part I've gotten into this book so far is that there's a chapter that starts off the second novel where Shinya meets Maharu, and they were like set up to be married from a very early age. And it's basically just because Shinya's strong. Like he's basically just there to help father her children, and they'll be strong little magic users, and Maharu hates it because she's in love with Gurren. So that's fun times, right? But I'll let you guys know more about the second novel when I get through with it. But yeah. When we last left off, speaking of Gurren, him and Shinya and the others were headed towards the mansion where Yu and them are at. We've just found out that Shinya and them possibly only have 1 more year to live. Shinya and them don't know, but Ferid is onto it. Ferid knows things. And Ferid also seems like he's banking on Gurren being there at the mansion. So things are getting bonkers. Someone commented with volumes 11 through 12. They were like, man, the anime kind of is a little bit predictable in places, but the manga kind of goes bonkers. And I'm like, yes, I loved the anime and thought it was cute. But now that I'm reading the manga, I'm like, no, this shit's going off the walls. And I'm kind of here for it, but it's very different than what I expected. I did not expect it to be anything like this. This is crazy to me. So yeah. So I'm hoping my glasses don't glare up too much. I tried to take them off, but it's hard to see. So I'm sorry I'm gonna have to record this one video with my glasses on, but hopefully that's okay. So we'll see. But anyway, let's not waste any more time. I'm pretty excited to dive in and see what happens in these chapters. There's only 8 chapters between these 2 volumes, but maybe they're long chapters. So maybe they're bigger chapters, right? I think this first chapter, chapter 56, is already looking to be 50 pages. So maybe they're 8 long chapters instead of being really short ones put together. So we'll see. But let's start this out. We're going to start volume 15 and 16 of Seraph of the End. And we're going to do that here in 3, 2, 1, and let's go. I walked into these 2 volumes thinking, oh, it's only 8 chapters. These have 2 less chapters than normal for 2 volumes. Won't be anything crazy happen. What is this manga? What is this manga? It goes so batshit off the walls in the craziest of directions, and you think it's gonna go one way, and then the mangaka's like, no, let's go somewhere totally different. There is a lot that happened in this volume, and I'm going to keep my glasses on despite the glare because I'm blind without them. There was a lot that happened in this volume quite a lot. Like, to the point where I was like, wow, we are going in directions I wasn't even thinking we were going to touch. And here we are. So this is going to be like chapter by chapter in these 2 volumes, like lots of things happened. And I was like, what is going on? So I don't think I'm going to bring White Raccoon out for this one because I feel like it wasn't like a big expo dump. The main thing is the fact that the first vampire may be a god, maybe a divine being. I'm glad we found out who the first vampire was. I talked about that in the last set of chapters. I know that most of you watching are probably like, haha, you're about to find out. I was like, what? So there's clearly a lot going on under the surface here. And what I like about this is that we're really blurring the lines of not necessarily what makes someone human. We talked about that in the last volume, and this volume is kind of asserting what a human, in Yu's mind, what a human is, right? In Yu's perspective, what a human is, what it means to be human. But the question isn't at this point necessarily, what makes you human, so much as what all types of beings are there, and is humanity the greatest thing? Because that's making you question certain things, because they're talking about we have angels, we have demons, we have all sorts of things. They mentioned devils in this, which is somewhat different. I remember in one of the manga or something in one of the volumes saying that devils and demons were somewhat different. I'm like, wait a minute, hold on. In one of the earlier volumes, they mentioned demons, angels, vampires, and devils, and humans. And devils were different than demons. So I'm like, okay, there's a difference there. So we're getting into all this lore stuff. But man, what a crazy bunch of circumstances. So what I like about the manga at this point is that if you've read the novels, there's going to be stuff pop up that I'm like, oh, okay, this ties back to the novel. But the manga is really clever in this, in that if you're a novel reader, then you kind of get some inference and you get some an extra layer to it. But if you're not a novel reader, then it won't throw you off. And so I appreciate the author is very cleverly weaving in stuff from the novel into this series, but making it to where you don't have to read the novels to get it, but it's like an added bonus if you did. It's like, aha. Because all I know so far from the first novel and the first couple chapters in this are some things that are going to pop back up in this series, like Shinya being engaged to Maharu. Maharu in the novel so far, when we see her in novel 1 and so far in part of novel 2, she's pretty much been taken over by her demon. Her demon side has taken over her a lot, and she's wrangling with it. And there's the Maharu that's warning Gurren, no, don't do this. Don't turn back now. And Gurren is too stubborn to do so. And so it's kind of sad and tragic. But you have Gurren and all of them. And Gurren knows that his friends only have a year left to live before they leave. But here's the thing, if Gurren wants to resurrect all of humanity that was killed by the virus, is it just going to be for 10 years? So what's the point? At this point, why bring all of humanity back for a decade if they're all going to die again? Unless he thinks there's a way to get it to where they don't die again. And where does Yu fit into all of this? He's got one of the trumpeters inside of him, one of the 7 trumpets. So he's got one of them inside of him. But what do we do with that? So that's interesting. So there's still lots of questions this series is asking, and I don't want to be spoiled. But I really don't, because you find out so much in a volume, much less 2, that you're like, wait, what's happening? Oh my god. So Shinya's demon is you can't trust Gurren anymore. His demon is under his control. Gurren seemed for the most part in this, that Gurren was in control. He seemed like he was. He seemed a little bit different than he'd been in the past when Maharu took over. Maharu has a madness to her that towards the end of the anime, when Gurren was getting all crazy, it was Maharu. It wasn't Gurren. It was Maharu controlling him. And you could tell the difference, right? And so I like that Gurren's oh, well, if all I have to do is win. And it's apparently. But it's he's trying to rescue his friends, but being secretive about it. And that is a big difference between him and Yu. Yu is very outright. Yu is to the point where it's honey, I did not picture you to be a sunshine character, but he really is. To the point where I'm maybe you should listen a little bit to Mika. Just a smidge. Mika may be onto something. We'll talk about that. But Yu is far too vocal about his reservations, about his trust, about his devotion. Yu is a communicative beast, right? He is a ray of sunshine. Gurren keeps a lot of things private, and that's how he is in the novels too. He keeps things very close to the vest, and he doesn't like to vocalize much stuff. And Shinya and the others kind of figure it out as they go. But yeah, he's all about saving his friends. And I'm like, how does resurrecting humanity fall in line with saving your friends? How does that work? How does that go about? And so I like that Crowley in all of this. He's not as present in all of this. And we'll talk about Ferid when we get to him, dear God. But Crowley's just kind of like, let's just kind of work things out, right? And so I like that Gurren and Shinya, I can't wait to read the other novels. It's funny because I have, novel 2 here, which have 16-year-old Gurren and Shinya on the cover, back to back. And here we have them fighting against each other in the first chapter of volume 15. So yeah, interesting, right? What can we do? But yeah, it's funny because Gurren, he knocks him out. And it's clear that Gurren and Shinya care for each other. And I'm sure in the novel there's going to be more to it. And of course, Mahiru's like, let me pit my fiance and my lover against each other. And it's just, I can't wait to read the novel and get more of them and talk about it. But so Mahiru knows that Shinoa is here, right? And they're all getting ready to go up. And Shinoa can't see her. So we get a big expo reveal with Shinoa and them. Apparently Shinoa's half demon. Not surprised, to be honest. I am not surprised that the Hiragi family was experimenting with demons. I am not surprised at all. And I kind of wondered if something was up because in previous volumes in the novel, and again, I'm only like barely into the second one. But in the novel, Mahiru, the demon makes a point of saying, what are you? You're not right. Like something else is amiss with Mahiru, and we've seen that here in the manga. But if Mahiru was half demon from the start, and then you compounded the demon on top of that, no wonder she went crazy, right? That makes total sense. And she wants Shinoa to go crazy too, and says Shinoa's demon hasn't awoken yet. And thinks that, what's funny in this is that she says, you need to fall in love for it to work. Because that will spur your desire, and it will spur your need to foster that desire and that greed to try to get them all to yourself, and that's what the demons feed off of. And Shinoa just doesn't really have that. She likes you, but she doesn't really. She likes you, but she doesn't really care for him romantically. She teases him a lot, but that's just not the case with her, right? Which is interesting. I was like, she's like, which boy do you want? And I'm like, the girl with the pigtails. I was like, Mahiru, you're looking at the wrong one. Shinoa ain't interested in any of the guys. You should focus on Mitsuba. Why aren't you doing that? So I was like, which would make sense. Mitsuba would be perfect in this scenario because it's like, Mitsuba's part of the Sengu family. The Sengu family have been like retainers for the Hiragis for years. Aoi clearly has a thing for Kureto. We'll talk about that business. But I'm like, so maybe Mahiru, you're looking at this the wrong way. She's not into guys like you were. Maybe she's into Mitsuba. That was my headcanon. But, And Mahiru's demon is just talking about how Mahiru fell. Mahiru fell because she was so in love with Gurren and had this desire for power to like show that they could be together, and it corrupted her. And like with Yu, he has a desire to protect his family and Mika, who he loves. And so that fosters the demon inside of him. And so Shinoa just doesn't really have that type of attachment, right? And Crowley's like, what's going on? And Shinoa's like, I don't really know exactly. I love that we see Kimazuki get like emotional and cry because his sister's still alive. Like that was great. I was like, okay, awesome. Kimazuki has feelings. He's like so excited about his sister being okay. He's still mad that she's being used by Kureto, but at least she's alive, right? And so Gurren reveals that he thinks that Hiragis are not the ones behind it all. Surprise, they're not. It's the first vampire behind it all, which which opens up a whole can of worms of questions of why the first vampire is wanting all these demons to get created, which it said welcome home. So it was talking about the one demon, Raimeki, is based off of a vampire I'm getting a lot of Chimera Ant vibes from Hunter x Hunter from this series. Like, I've not watched all of Hunter x Hunter, but I made it originally to like the Chimera Ants, and that's a messed up deal. And this is reminding me a lot of that. And I was like, okay. So like these demons being a part of the humans, and they're like combined with their souls. It's very Chimera Ant. It's very crazy. But yeah, he thinks that the Hiragis are just pawns. They are for this doji. This doji vampire could be God. It's crazy, right? And I honestly did not expect them to be like, Tenri was no longer human. He's like Saito. He's in the same business. What the heck? So that begs the question. He had the chains coming out of him too, right? Like Saito did. And so if that's the case, and Tenri has like this vampire inside of him, what the heck's going on with Saito? Does Saito have like this angelic god presence in him too? He's the second progenitor, so maybe, but they treat it like he's not even a vampire anymore. So there's a whole nother can of worms with the chains and all that going on. And we see the chains that are binding the sixth trumpeter. So what the heck series? What is going on? I do like that Tenri's spirit is like a snake. It's interesting. And it tries to go after Aoi and the others. And so Gurren says that Kureto is the same as Maharu. They struggle and they fight and they walk the path as close to what they believe is right. Right. And Shino is like, the struggle for power, right? That was the one gift my gifted sister had and has consumed my brother too, right? And he's like, oh, you think that you're not going to be corrupted as well? And he says that she was experimented on. She was created, fused together with a demon. And so what does Shikama Doji whisper in your ear? And Shikama Doji is the first vampire that supposedly is this god this is interesting, that whispers in her ear, that has a connection. And Shinoa's like, I don't know. Interesting. And then Yu's somehow in here. So we don't know how Yu's connected to it all, which is interesting. And so it's fascinating. So I'm curious to know how the first vampires, how they originated. If they originated from a god, how does that work? If it's not a god, how does that work? Why then aren't the vampires don't like demons, or they use the demons? How does that all work? There's so much, like, the world building is expanding, but it's like you look in a tree trunk and you see like the first ring, and then you see the rings get bigger and bigger. Like, we're getting more and the world building is expanding, but there's still so much left unanswered. And you don't realize there's so much left unanswered until these chapters come along and you're like, oh, we really don't know anything. We really don't know how this world works, do we? We haven't been explained enough. Good to know. And then, Kureto loses an arm, but it gets regrown back. It's very reminiscent. In the first light novel with Gurren, his arm gets slashed off, but Gurren slashes his own arm off to keep this demon from trying to take over him. And it gets put back on. But Kureto already had the demon inside of him, so it didn't matter, right? And then we see that the angel that Kimazuki's sister is controlling, Mirai, it fires through the building and kills Tenri, and then, or at least wounds Tenri enough, like cuts him in half so that Kureto can stab him in the heart and kill him. And then he's like, yeah, he's going to come for you now. He's like, I've just been holding off and waiting to die. And now you're in charge, so you get it to possess you. And the shadow that the sun makes on the building, and the little, like, the shadow and the being, like, plips out of it. Creepy as hell. And then we see this thing with the angel wings. The original vampire. You're the new king of men. And but this is what it says. I'm not a god. He has a far more twisted personality than I. So there is a god. It's not this. No. And then he says, you make it sound like you know him personally. And the little vampire goes, probably. That's, interesting. And so then when he tries to stab him, he says it to him, with the sword, he says, welcome home, Reimeki. Which turns out to be a woman demon. Interesting that Kureto's possessed by a woman demon. Would not have suspected it. But then this vampire halts the Seraph, which is quite interesting, and says, did you try to kill me with that? An experiment I've had humans working on for me for quite some time. It's not yours. So this vampire has been wanting them to create the Seraph of the End, which is kind of what Cruel was wanting to do. So they are connected in that way. And so he basically possesses Kureto just like he did his dad. Ugh. And so now I'm Shikama Doji, the first vampire. So this is all very interesting. So now Kureto is possessed by not only a demon, but the first vampire. The fudge? I guess that would explain why Saito has the chains, but that's interesting. I'm like, okay, curious. So Shikama Doji is the first vampire and is in possession of the Hiragi's by blood. Okay. And somehow may know the god that the angels came from. Okay, so, and this vampire has angel wings too. So they're all connected, right? You have humanity and the vampires and demons we've known have been connected. That the vampires can become demons and the demons can possess humans. Okay? And we know now that it makes sense. If vampires can become demons and demons can possess humans, then vampires should be able to possess humans. But this vampire, the first one, has angel wings. So it's connected to the angels. So how does that work? So, like I said, we've got questions and it's just, there's more answers. There's more answers needed and we're just not getting them yet. It's kind of fascinating. But yeah, so then Kureto, A Reason to Survive, chapter 58. And so Kureto, we see his demon, Raimeki, which I like Raimeki's design with the horn and it looks like the scantily clad lady demon. I like it. Interestingly enough that Kureto's possessed by a scantily clad lady demon. Interesting. So I like that Raimeki is like, look, and says, we demons have hardly any memories of what we once were. Because they were once vampires, right? Who were once humans, right? So... So of course they don't have any memories, right? Ashura Maru seems to have memories of someone or something, which is interesting, right? Because he's used the power of Nakama on a demon inside of him to make him remember his long lost sister. Why should we be surprised? But Raimeki's like, I don't really exactly remember of what we once were. You were once vampires, but you don't remember. And so he says that's why we want greed and desires. They don't have any, and that kind of makes sense because vampires, as Crowley's been saying, they have slowly been losing their emotional ties to any emotional state. So of course these demons who now not only have a loss of an emotional state but have no memories, they would seek out greed and desire because that's like an emotional foundation for them, right? As messed up as it is. Makes sense. He's like, you've built up a wall between us, Kureto, and now you need to let that wall down a little bit. He's like, you're drawn to Gurren and Maharu because they gave into their desires so easily. And he's like, are you on Shikama Doji's side? And he's like, oh, hell no, I don't want to mess with Shikama Doji. Like, I'm trying to protect you from them. Interesting. I love the idea of the demon stuck in the cage, right? And the crack. I love the demon in the cage and it has like its arms all around it. Oh my gosh, I love it. The shadow. This is the real me. I love it's like Shikama Doji's trying to open a door into your heart so he can get in it. And the demon's trying to keep him out. And he's like, you're going to have to get a little bit greedier and loosen up a little bit and let me in a little bit if we're going to do this. And he's like, ugh. And he's like, you need to pick, like, are you going to, desire to fight with Gurren and them? Are you going to desire like a lady? Like you need to pick your battles. And so Kureto, Aoi clearly likes him and he actually kisses her. I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe that. But he just kissed her to try to like buy him some more time. I don't think he actually likes Aoi, but it's sad because she clearly likes him. Ugh. And then I like that picture of them looking at each other and they both have their eyes open and it's like, mm-hmm. And she's like, excuse me? And he's like, oh, that bought me some time. He's like, I'm no longer worthy of being king. I like that as he tells her he's no longer worthy of being king and that he's lost, he has his hand over hers. I like that. See, in the novel, they establish that the Hiragi family, they're like the head occult family, and then the Ichinoses were like one of the lower class families, but even they had classes lower than them. And so like Sayuri in the novel, you find out Sayuri and Shiguri, their families like had raised them to be like bodyguards to the Ichinoses, and the Sengus were raised to be like bodyguards to the Hiragis. So they have like a natural desire to protect them. It's like raised into them. And for Sayuri, and I guess in Aoi's case, they both are like, you know, if you need to like let off some tension, we're here from you, which is a really crazy thought, right? Like they're there for their, you know, sexual pleasure and stuff. But luckily Guren's not like that, and Kureto is not either. Because he's like, you know, she's like, oh, you need a greater desire? And she's like, what do you need of me, my lord? And he's like, what should I do? And she's like, you know, do you want to like hook up or something? And he's like, no, I need to get a hold of people who I can trust. And it's crazy. So this powerful greed that he's going to rely on Guren and Shinya. You're getting greedy for others to be around you. It's funny because in this series, like love is treated like it's a weapon, right? And it can be a curse too, right? And it can lead to like greed and desire, which are, you know, sinful things in this world. It's curious how it's all set up. Very curious. But I'm kind of with Mika. Mika this whole time, this entire series has been like, things are getting worse. And I know Mika's like, here's the funny thing, for all Mika is worried about losing his emotions, he's got some emotions pretty welled up, like fear and doubt and love for you and just incredulity. Like he's got all these emotions built up. And I'm like, for this unfeeling vampire, you really still have got some in you, Mika. But I'm kind of with him. I'm like, this is not a good scenario. Guren wanting to resurrect the world will clearly have some kind of consequences. And Mika's like, you know, Yu's probably gonna get hurt. We need to go. All right. But Yu is just so on the Guren bandwagon. Yu's like, Guren's fine, right as rain. Guren can't do any wrong. And Mika's like, let's kill him and get it over with. He's bad news. I'm kind of with Mika. I'm reading a series that has Guren as the main character, but even I'm like, he might have some issues. I feel like Guren Ichinose Catastrophe at 16 is literally a novel series that might as well be called This Guy's Got Some Issues and it's going to affect some people. But Guren is convinced that he can't die yet. He's got to resurrect either the world or his friends. Again, however this goes. And Mika's just like, Yu's like, he's our family. And Mika's like, you're really on this Nakama kick, aren't you? And you can just tell Mika it's killing him, but he loves Yu so much that he's like, I'm sorry. He's like, if you have to hate me, you hate me. But he ends up not being able to do this. He's like, am I the one taking crazy pills? He's like, Guren's caused all of our problems, right? Are we okay with this? And Guren's just like, I don't care. He's like, I'm just doing what I gotta do. And he's like, just leave Yu alone. And he's like, I need you. And Mika's like, I hate this so much. And I love this. I love when Crowley says he seems awful excited about this. How long will he be able to hold on to that passion? Meaning, yeah, you still got some humanity in you. How long are you going to keep it? Because I guess Crowley is suggesting like humanity, they're so insane. They do crazy things that don't make logical sense. He's like, are you really going to keep up with trying to keep up with the insanity going on? Or are you just gonna like become like all the rest of us vampires and just let it go, you know, and just be like, no, they're a lost cause. I get a lot of Soul Eater vibes too with the demons. The demons in this series, I get a lot, and the madness in them, I get lots of Soul Eater vibes from that, which is interesting. And so, yeah, so Narumi, I like Narumi. He's like, I like that Narumi tries to steer this around and not make it Guren's fault totally. And I haven't read the other novels, so I don't know. But Narumi's like, look, is this really Guren's fault? If you hadn't saved your friends and resurrected them, was the world going to end anyway? And Guren's like, So yeah, that's kind of the thing in the novel. In the first novel, Maharu tells him that the world's going to end on Christmas, whether he likes it or not. At this point, his friends haven't died and he's not tried to resurrect them. So it was already prophesized it was going to happen. So Narumi's like, so the catastrophe was still going to happen no matter what, right? So why are you feeling guilty about it? It wasn't your fault. And Yu's like, Narumi's onto something. I love that Yu gets this really excited face and Mika's like, semantics, none of that is important. It's the best. Mika's like, don't listen to him. And Gurren's like, I'm still the one that pulled the trigger. Like, Gurren still takes responsibility. But even Shinoa's like, no, the Hiragi family had something to do with this. No. He's like, something was going on. Who's in charge of this? And Gurren's like, I don't know. And she's like, you're a liar. And that's when Yu's like, just tell us what you're trying to do. And Mika's like, stop asking him questions. He's like, we shouldn't hear this. Mika's figured out in his mind, he's like, this is all Pandora's box. And he's like, I know how humans are. You get curious. You want to keep on trying. It's not good. We should just walk away. We shouldn't be asking these questions. We shouldn't be hearing this. We should walk away while we still can. But Yu wants to know. And that's when he says, he's like, I'm going to resurrect everybody. And Mika's like, oh my God, this is you will be all about this. Oh, and like his arm twitching, that's interesting. And that look from Crowley is fascinating too, because his arm twitches at resurrecting humanity. And Crowley's like, like, what does this mean? I love the chapter title, Who is Your Owner? Like, who controls who, right? Who's in charge? And it's just Mika being pissed off at Gurren. I love it. Because Yu's like, this is awesome. Gurren's totally fine. And Mika's like, I don't trust him at all. He's like, is it just going to be people killed by the virus? And he says, yes. So then, yeah, what's the point of all these others that were not killed by the virus, but by other vampires, if you're just going to resurrect the people from the virus? Like, how does that work? And how does it work? Because the people from the virus, like, it's kind of morbid, but Yoichi and Shinoa bring up a good point. They're like, they all are decayed and gone. Like, their bodies are no more. It's been 8 years. They're not there. So how are you going to resurrect them? How does that work? What's that going to look like? I've watched Full Metal Alchemist. You don't just resurrect people without a price, and it doesn't always look pretty. So no. I'm with Mika. This smells like a big con. And the fact that he needs Yu is very suspect, and I don't like it. And Yu's so damn trusting, and Mika's like, this is not good, Yu. And he's like, oh, they need me. Oh, how great. And I'm like, oh my God. He's like, Gurren, are you lying to me? And Mika's like, I love Mika's expression. He's like, you stop it. Oh my God, I can't. I've got to take a picture of Mika's expression, because it's just the best thing is just Mika being like so done. Like, why do I love you? I never pegged Yu going into this series as being this trusting. Like, he went from being someone that was like, I don't trust anybody or like anybody, and now he's this big ball of sunshine that is like so trusting. And Mika's like, I'm just like, oh my God. Like, he's gotten Mika back into his life, and it's made him a totally different person. And Mika's like, oh my God, please. He's like, if you get too greedy, you'll lose everything again. I've found you. I don't want us to get separated again. Like, Mika's got some truth to those words, because we've seen what greed does to these humans and how it like totally warps them. And Mika's like, I don't want you to end up like that. And he's like, if I think you are in real trouble, I will start by killing Gurren. And Gurren's like, fine, you can. I've done more than enough to deserve it. And he's like, shut up. he's like, stop it. Quit being self-loathing. I will never trust you. I mean it, never. And Yu's like, I'm sure you're going to like Gurren eventually. And Mika's like, I hate you. But then Crowley says, but he's a vampire. Vampires don't grow to like anybody. They can't. So that's interesting. Why can't they? Their emotions have supposedly been removed, but how does that work? What does that mean? What does that look like? Like, that's so interesting that Crowley says that. He's like, they can't like people. And it's like, but Mika clearly likes you, right? So, And then, of course, after that, we cut to Gurren, like, watching Shinya sleep. I've not gotten that deep in the novel. See, in the first novel, Gurren and Shinya don't like each other at all because they both like Maharu. But I'm like, are these bisexual kings? Does Gurren like Shinya? Are they just very good friends? I don't know. I know people ship Shinya and Gurren, but it's interesting. It's interesting how this all works. And I like that Yu's like, does it hurt having to keep these secrets from your friends? And Gurren's like, oh, not really, no, because he hides everything. And Yu's like, I think it had to have hurt. It's like, And so then they decide they need to train him. The training method is as basic as it comes. We're just going to keep making you go insane until we make it work. Pretty straightforward. I like that they talk about like giving him these drugs, and Mika keeps saying, oh, more drugs. Well, we could quit drugging my boyfriend. Can we quit doing that? That's great. And he's like, he calls him Little Michaela, and I love that he's like, I'm going to kill him. It's great. Meanwhile, while Shinoa and Kimazuki and Narumi are trying to read these ancient ruins that don't work, and then Shinya wakes up, they shoot Yu, he nearly dies, everything's fine, he's okay, and Mika's like, this is, I love Goshi's reaction of, what the heck is going on, is like the best thing ever. I freaking love it. I love that Goshi's like, what's happening? We just woke up, what's going on? It's great. But yeah, so then we go to the whole fifth progenitor, which is Kai Luke. I couldn't remember his name in the last set. It's Kai Luke, the fifth progenitor. And I love that Ferid is just biding his time, waiting to be rescued. Our boy Ferid, oh my God, he's the most ridiculous. Ferid is, I can't hate Ferid. I can't, because he's so freaking weird and charismatic that I'm like, I can't hate him. It's too late. But surrounding Kai Luke, this chapter, and then the whole thing with the dolls, where they're like, Goshi, the oil, and they just use the example with the dolls, and they have the little court jester that's supposed to be Ferid tied up and on fire. I'm like, what the hell? And they're like all different little shapes and everything, and they use the puppy dog as Kai Luke. And then he burns up on accident, and then Crowley like finds this little, it looks like Beelzebub off Ouran High School Host Club. It's freaking adorable. I'm like, what? He's like, he is super powerful. And I love that even Yu and Mika are like, this is really dumb, Gurren. They're like, what are you doing? Why? I'm definitely convinced that during these two volumes, Gurren is not possessed by Maharu. He is very much in control of himself, right? That's because this is it seems very Gurren, right? And so they decide that they need to go after Cruel and Ferid, because apparently Kai Luke is so powerful that even Yu in angel demon form is not going to be enough. So fun like that. And I like again that Ferid is represented, according to Gurren, by the jester, by the Joker. Very cool. So yeah, they give him these drugs. They're going to like amplify his ability for once, for like a very short amount of time. And here's the thing, like Kai Luke, he just instantly shatters Shinya and Yoichi's demon, instantly stops the rings, the UV rings, and instantly like finds Goshi and his illusion, like just like that. Like it didn't take him any time at all. I'm like, oh my God. And then Crowley fights him for a hot second, and he's got these like tendrils Kai Luke does on his arm. It's like, ugh. And he's like, you guys are a diversion. For what reason? And we find out he's like, oh, they're trying to rescue one of them. And he's like, who should I go after? And that's when Yu attacks. And he's like, oh, time to kill a monster. And then he realizes, like, okay, this one's actually kind of strong. So if I've got to sacrifice anybody, who do I sacrifice? And he chooses to sacrifice Ferid, probably because he doesn't want to deal with Ferid anymore. So he chooses to run off with Cruel, which is kind of, it's such a play on the author, right? It's such a play on the author, and it's intentional because on the one hand, you see why he would choose to save Ferid, why he would choose to save Cruel and sacrifice Ferid, because Cruel is the more powerful progenitor. But also, we've established that inside Yu is Ashura, who's become Aziramaru, and the author does not want him and his sister to reconnect yet. Right? So there's that. And so, but then he says, I have a bad feeling I can't quite place around Maharu. What the heck is that? So Maharu is different. Again, it's something is up with Maharu and whatever is inside of her, whether she's a demon mixed with an angel, whatever is going on, something's happening. And Kai Luke's like, this is weird. I don't like it. So I'm going to leave. But he like punches a hole inside of Yu, crushing his heart, and then it's regenerating. So he's like, what are you, a vampire? That's the thing too. They're all related, right? So it's like, I mean, the demons are from vampires, so I guess so. But yeah, that ties into the whole regeneration thing, because the demon was like, I can't activate my regeneration powers if there's too much of the angel in you. So that makes sense. It's just, oh my God. But then he decides to cut his losses, and then Ferid shows up. Or at least half of Ferid, grabbing Crowley's sword. I didn't recognize it as Ferid at first because his hair is short. It's like his hair is slowly growing back. It's so short. But he's been cut in half. And his, like, you see, like, all the scars and stuff. And he has a band across his... that's the UV ring. That's the UV ring that he's got on him. Okay. And his hair is slowly growing back. He looks really good with short hair. I kind of like Ferid with short hair better. I kind of wish he'd keep the short hair. But it seems like it's slowly growing back, right? And then his lower half just shuffling back. The fudge... He's like, what is happening? He's like, how can a severed part of his body still move? So there's something to that too. Like, how does that work? Okay. But then, yeah, Kai Luke is like, okay, bye, see ya. Getting out of here now. I'm going to take Cruel and go. And just yoinks off with her still on the cross. And then, yeah, I still can't get over the one shot of... He's like, we rescued the perv. And it's just him sitting there, like, his torso waving, like, clutching the sword. It's the funniest damn thing I've ever seen. And I'm like, what? Why? Show. Series. Oh, my God. It's the funniest thing. I can't with Ferid. I also can't when he flashes. He flashed Shinoa and Mitsuba. Our boy, he's like, come and see the show, and like flashed his naked body to them. These poor girls have been scarred for life seeing a naked Ferid. I honestly can't. I love that Shinoa instantly chops off his head. She's like, oh my God, no, you pervert. An evil and twisted vampire's out there. And he's like, what's wrong? And then I love Mika's like, see, I told you we shouldn't bother rescuing him. Oh my God, the humor of these volumes is the funniest damn thing I think I've ever seen. I have to take pictures of it because I'm like, what is even happening? I can't. This was too good. I love Crowley's like, I got your clothes. He's like, he sees his head rolls over to Crowley. He's like, didn't take long before you started having fun, did it? Could have dodged that. He's like, what would be the fun in that? And I put my head back on. Oh my God. And so he asked how it felt to get burned by the sun. And he was like, oh, I was wondering if I was suddenly feeling alive again. He's like, nope, you're definitely long dead. Yeah, our hearts are long dead. Aren't you jealous of humans being alive? So yeah, so that's the thing too. So the vampires, their hearts have stopped, right? And that kind of ties to probably why they need blood, because they need blood to keep going. That makes sense. That ties to it. But it also ties to the fact that their hearts are dead, so they don't have any emotions left. So then Mika drinking the human blood kind of solidified him being a vampire. It also solidified his heart being dead. So he's slowly losing all those emotions that are tied to it, right? But he's like, well, we're definitely going to be called traitors. And Ferid's like, we were that anyway. But I love that his hair, in each panel, his hair is slowly growing back. It's really cool. Like back to how it was. And we see poor Kureto. I never thought I'd say the words poor Kureto, but he's got this angel vampire trying to take him over. And he's like, we're not battling the other vampires, we're battling God. Oh, and you see his hair growing back. And the chapter's titled, Who's More Bored? Interesting. Which kind of he's joined the conversation about Seraph at the end, which kind of has kind of like Death Note vibes, because we established like the Shinigami realm, which is like beyond humanity, was bored too. So, and it's gotten all rotten. So lots of questions, right? Lots of questions. But we've got a couple other chapters here to talk about. I realize now Kai Luke is holding the cross that Cruel is on over his shoulder. That's nice. I like that. But him just taking Cruel and making this car into a convertible and just drives off with her like smoking in the distance. This show is so bizarre. This series is so bizarre. I love it though. I kind of love it. And then Cruel is like, I sensed my brother Ashura. Like she like, I know it was him. And so here's the thing. Maharu Hiragi upheld her part of our bargain. My brother is inside the human named Yu. So that was the deal. She's like, that's why she wants Yu kept safe, because she knows her brother's in there. Aha. Okay. Okay. And she wants her brother back. So that was part of their deal. So curious. I haven't reached further in the novels to know if we get to see that with Hiragi, with Maharu. But that's interesting that that was the deal. Okay. And then this whole conversation with Ashuramaru is great. He's like, look at you. You're holding one hand in your sword. You've got, in your hand, you hold an angel's trumpet. But the drugs you need to control the angel's power have transformed your whole arm into something like a devil's. Like a devil's, which is interesting. But your whole rest of your body's been taken. He's like, you're just a mix. Like, what are you trying to become? What are you in the first place? He's like, what were you to start with? Have you been human this whole time? Are you not? What's going on? And then Yu gets the drugs out of his system and turns back into regular cheerful Yu. And he's like, ah. And so then Ashuramaru has this idea that there's someone that he must find. He's like, I'm a demon. All demons want to. He's like, no, you're a liar. He's like, you want something. You have a desire. So that's interesting that these demons that supposedly have no desires, and that's why they prey on humans, that he still has one. So it's curious. And then I like that Yu's like, well, I help, we're friends. And he's like, we're not friends. And he's like, yeah. And so then Ashuramaru tries to peer into his past, and he keeps going back and back. So we see that Maharu knew Yu from way back when. Knew he was being experimented on. But something happened even before then, and the memories have been erased. Interesting. Something's up. Something's happened, and Ashuramaru's like, I want to find out. He's like, we're the amnesia twins. They really are, because Ashuramaru can't remember what they were before becoming a demon, and you can't remember his past either. So they really are similar. I'm curious to know if Ashuramaru encounters Cruel, what's going to happen and how they're going to react to that. I don't know, but it's going to be interesting. And then he's like, you need to use it. You're not going to be able to save anyone if you don't use your brain. At least that's what your partner would say. My partner? Oh, I can't imagine who. I'm like, Ashuramaru, did you just become captain of the Mika Yu ship? Are you totally on board with this? Because I love that they just, the author's like, it's your partner. Right there, your BFF, your boyfriend. No, not your friend, your partner. I'm like, yeah, the author ships it. We all ship it. It's like, it's Mika Yu. I'm so happy it's out there. I'm like, what a great round out to Pride Month, right? But they're at Gurren Ichinosei's, they're at the Ichinosei's estate, which is where the labs were where they conducted human experiments. So this is something that is what I've read in the novel so far. I'm only in chapter 3 of this, but in chapter 2 of the second novel, they talk about how Gurren, the Hiragis had been experimenting on humans for a long time, and the Ichinoseis had not been until Gurren took Maharu's demon inside of himself, and then he wanted to start having people, he wanted to have himself experiment on it first, and it became like this infectious virus. Like the madness spread to everybody in the estate, and they all wanted to start experimenting with the demons and everything, and it just got out of control very quickly. And so chapter 63 is proof of being human, which is a really good chapter. And so Yu still has he still has an angel wing and a horn. We still don't know exactly what Yu is, and it like all retracts and everything. So he's like, oh, they healed up. And Mika's like, things are only getting worse. The situation sucks. I'm like, I'm with Mika. Things are not looking good. And clearly they're going through the lab with Ichinoseis, and they managed to go through this one room, and we see all of these experiments. Yep. And he's like, this is totally human experimentation. He's like, you make it sound so minor. And he says he has good reasons for doing it. And I'm with Mika. Mika's like, they always think they have good reasons. Serial killers think they have good reasons. I'm like, man, Mika, for being an emotionless vampire, you really hit the nail on the head. He's like, his demon is controlling him. And Yu's like, well, my demon takes control of me too. And Mika's like, and I'm a vampire. I guess we can't judge each other. It's great. He's like, you say it like it's so easy to save the world. It's great. And so then Yu's like, I'm glad I found you, Mika. You're super nice as always. He's like, and because you're being stupid nice as always, you're causing me all kinds of problems. But I love it together. I love that they are together in this. And he's like, this is all taboo. He's like, we shouldn't be doing this. And Yu's like, I don't care. He's like, I'm going to get our family back. Our family. His and Mika's. And I'll do anything. The end justifies. It's crazy. He's like, the ends justify the means. It's like, I wasn't able to make them family. He's like, if I have to kill other people to do it, I will. And I'm like, holy shit. Okay. He's like, that's what it means. Whatever it takes to protect my family and friends, that's what it means to be human to you. And he's like, right? And Mika's like, and I think that Mika realizes, he's like, yeah, I kind of was willing to do the same thing that you were. Because Mika's like, yeah, I was willing to kill any of those humans and anybody that stood in my way to get to you because you were my family and my friend and I wanted to save you. And so when Yu says the same thing, but he says that's what it means to be human, it's acknowledging that that state of being human, that humanity is still within you too, because he still wants to help. He still wants to help you save their family. So it's like, I love that little handshake between them. It's so cute. Like, aw. And so Gurren says after the catastrophe, he took over the experimentation. And Gurren's like, well, and they're like, who'd you take it over from? And he's like, well, let's go in here. So he says they're sealing a monster inside, which is one of the trumpets. And so then I like that he brings up to Mika, he's like, oh, I haven't been pulling the strings. That guy, Saito, that you were with all throughout your childhood, yeah, he was actually a second progenitor. Hope you didn't know that. Yeah, he's freaky. And then the scene with Mika wanting the candy is in the first novel. In the first novel, Gurren goes to the grocery store and he sees Saito with Mika going after all the candy. It's from the novel. It's great. I was like, I love the callback to it. And so the sixth trumpeter, another angel. And again, there's a tie with the chains, right? And so I love this scene where we see them about to go into the barrier and Mika's like, it's too dangerous. We shouldn't go in. And he's like, well, we got to learn about ourselves. If we don't go in, we'll stay in the dark. And Mika's like, fine, I'll go first. And he says, no, we'll go together as long as we're with each other. And they walk side by side. It's like all this messed up stuff is happening and all this lore is crashing down. And then there's just Mika and Yu, black and white, next to each other. It's so cute. I love it. I freaking love it. I'm like, okay, it's my favorite. I'm all about it. And then we see this angel like crying blood and has a giant trumpet. And so it says he's been summoning horsemen into the world for the past 8 years to punish humanity for its sins. And so Yu's like, you're kidding. What is he? And then he's like, what is he? What am I? Like, what is all of this? And that's where the volume ends, because of course that's where the volume ends. I'm like, oh my God, it's great. These two volumes, so much happened. And I was like, what the heck? But here we are. So, oh my God. Oh my God. So yeah. I have so many questions. I don't know how much further I will get into this novel. I read the first novel in like 2 days. I like binge read it, but I had some days where I didn't have a lot going on, so I could sit there and binge read. I've gotten a little bit busier lately, so I don't think I can binge read quite like I was those 2 days, but I am going to finish the second novel, and I have the third and the fourth one. The novels are really good, by the way. I have a feeling I'm going to be heartbroken by them, by the end of them, but we'll see. I'll stay optimistic as long as I can. But yeah, so many questions being brought up. I'm going to try to read more of the second novel before reading volume 17 and 18, but so much is happening and it's all crazy. So yeah. I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm pretty darn excited. So I hope y'all are too. But in the meantime, I'm curious to know your thoughts down below. I hope y'all enjoyed this reaction discussion. I'm curious to know your thoughts. Please, no spoilers. I'm going to read volume 17 and 18 next week. But in the meantime, I hope y'all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and yeah, I will be back very soon with volume 17 and 18 of Seraph of the End.